Hello crafty friends, have you ever created a piece of mixed media to use on a card and then gone, I don't know what to do with this? Well, that's what happened to me with this piece of mixed media that I'm making now. I started with smooth white cardstock and smushed on some scattered straw distress oxide. I then smushed on some abandoned coral over the top. I'd hydrated the inks with a white shimmer spray, so it had a bit of a shimmer to it. And I really liked how it looked. I liked the mixture of the pink and the yellow, lovely, warm, sunshiny colours. I then had the idea of doing some heat embossing on top of this, so I gave it a good dry and I dusted it with talcum powder to remove any moisture, static or oily fingerprints. And then I grabbed one of my embossing pens and drew some concentric circles on one area of the card. I thought white would look really nice and stand out well against the background, so I drizzled on some detail white embossing powder, but it didn't stick particularly well to the embossing pen ink. I don't know if the ink was a bit dry, but I persevered. I heated it with my heat tool to melt it, and then I thought, right, let's try a different approach. I'm going to use my glycerin in my rollerball bottle. And instead of doing concentric circles, I did lots of swirls. I then drizzled over the same white embossing powder again, and I got a much better result. It was grungy and messy, but I got a lot more of the powder sticking to the ink. And then I just went for it. I scribbled lots of swirls, heat embossed, let it cool, scribbled some more, heat embossed, let it cool, and I ended up with a really grungy, scribbly, interesting background that I had to leave to one side until I could finally figure out what to do with it. After a couple of days, I settled on die cutting some balloons. I thought the circular swirliness would look good on a balloon shape. So I chose 3 different size balloon dies and ran them through my die cutting machine with my background and just kept going until I'd eked every balloon out of the background that I could. I wanted to give my balloons a bit of definition, a bit of shading around the edge, so I used abandoned coral on a finger dauber and just went around the edge of all the balloons. I did buff the excess ink off of the embossing with a microfiber cloth because it wouldn't dry on the ink and the recipient of the card might, touch the front of the card and then end up with ink all over their fingers, which isn't what you want really. As I was rummaging through my cardstock trying to decide what to do with my balloons, I came across this piece of smooth white card that I'd previously covered in double-sided adhesive. So I removed the release paper and then added balloons all over the front, spreading out the different sizes so it looked kind of random. I then got some white glitter. It doesn't look very glittery in the video, but if you look at the close-up pictures at the end, you can see the glitter in amongst the white powder, whatever the white powder is that the glitter is mixed with. And I sprinkled that all over the exposed adhesive. I did that a couple of times to make sure I got good coverage, and then I took that release paper that I'd removed and burnished that glitter down into the double-sided adhesive. I then picked up my panel, gave it a good tap with a brush to knock off excess glitter, and then I brushed over it again to knock off any final bits of unstuck glitter. And that glitter is now going nowhere. It is well and truly stuck to that double-sided adhesive. I then took a stitched rectangle die and cut a panel from my glittery balloon paper. Because there's so much card here, it didn't die cut all the way through, so I just used my guillotine to cut along the cut lines. I then die cut out a piece of smooth white card using the next size up stitched rectangle die, and I went around the outside with abandoned coral to create a coloured mat on which to stick my balloon piece. I used tape runner to stick that balloon piece to my abandoned coral piece, and then I used tape runner again to stick the whole thing onto a card blank. I made my card blank from a piece of A4 white cardstock that I'd folded in half. And all I did was I placed the balloon panel where I wanted it, and then I used my guillotine to chop off the excess on two sides. For my sentiment, I die cut the word congrats out of gold foil cardstock, and I used some abandoned coral again to colour a piece of smooth white card, which I then cut with the shadow or the outline for the congrats piece. And I stuck that in the middle horizontally, just above the middle vertically. It just looked right there. And as a finishing touch, I added a little bit more gold in the form of little gold stars that I'd punched out of the same gold cardstock that I'd used for the congrats. And that's this card finished. I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. I really enjoyed making the background, even if I didn't know what I was going to do with it at the time. But I think it turned out really well. Right, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it's given you some ideas and encouragement. If it has, please do let me know in the comments. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and I'll see you back here in a couple of days for another video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.